Hello, my dear masterminds. They called them from every direction time could. Music measure. Generals whose maps had ended empires. Grandmasters who could see 14 moves into a man's future. Economists who bent nations with equations. Music negotiators who turned enemies into signatures. Tacticians whose names were rumors and pseudonyms that had no doors. They arrived in silence, but the room filled with music, the kind of pressure that makes wood remember it was once a tree. Pages fluttered without wind. Torches steadied as if they too were listening. The rulers who summoned them wore relief like armor. Decades, the rulers thought. These minds have decades. There is no move that survives decades. Your move had survived decades. Your move had survived decades. That was the problem. A single decision, a pattern without pattern, a step that made the board behave. Music, like water. They had studied the recordings, they had slowed the frames, they had built models, and then built models to interrogate the models. Results disagreed with themselves. Every attempt to pin your move down failed. Pinholes left only air. Some said it was luck, but luck does not repeat this long. Others said it was bluff, but bluffs collapse when you look too closely and your move grew larger under scrutiny, like music, a star mistaken for a candle until the sky goes dark. The chamber was stone and circle. The shape strategists. Music prefer when pretending to be humble. Seats were set by rank. But rank felt shy in the presence of old victories. They did not introduce themselves. Victory is a language, and they were fluent in each other's accents. On the table lay boards of every discipline, chess and campaign charts, market curves and legislative flowcharts, ritual diagrams and contingency trees, music, each a theology of prediction. You entered without entourage, without announcement, without the courtesy of a herald. Presence did not knock, presence sat. Music. The chair did not protest. A historian cleared his throat and recited the dossier. Top strategists spent decades. Your move remains undefeated. The words were both confession and accusation. Music meant, we are here to end inevitability. You did not answer because inevitability does not attend debates. The first general placed a transparent grid over the board as if the grid, music, were sacred. A game theorist uncapped a pen the color of verdict. A master of timing watched the clock the way sailors watch tides. Fingers on rhythms only he could feel. A negotiator folded his hands into a cathedral and smirked. Certain that even gods must bargain. They agreed on rules because strategists worship rules the way kings worship ancestral lines. First principle, every move has a counter. Second, if there is no counter, redefine the move until one appears. Third, if redefinition fails, stall for time because time erodes miracles. They admired their own caution as if it were wisdom. They forgot that rules are bridges. Music, presence is shoreline. Bridges do not instruct oceans. They asked for a demonstration, your move, one more time on their terms. You obliged without flourish, a hand, a step, a decision that did not shout its cleverness. The boards did not crash, no pieces flew, nothing dramatic, only gravity changing its mind by a degree. The eye pretends not to see until an army discovers music Its flank is yesterday, and the market wonders why numbers feel heavier. The room tried not to flinch. Flinching is bad optics among professionals, but several flinched anyway, as if a memory had just remembered them. They began their rituals. Freeze the frame, widen the frame, strip the context, add it back, simulate 10,000 universes, and ask each to vote. The simulations disagreed like brothers who swear they were at the same dinner. Probabilities jittered, certainty shrugged. A logician wrote, "Undefeated Nini, unbeatable," on a slate and underlined it twice to calm the room. The chalk broke on the third line. The room pretended not to notice that objects also have opinions. A woman whose victories were measured in trusses traced your decisions outline in the air and frowned when her finger returned blurred music, as if she had dipped it in a river. None of them had seen. The grandmaster moved a knight to c6 in a game that was not on the table. He blinked as if catching himself trespassing in someone else's century. An economist whispered to his formula and got an answer that sounded like weather. A political architect drew a coalition and watched an invisible door close between two men who had shaken hands yesterday. Decades took their seats like dignitaries. Data poured its wine. History warmed the bread. Confidence licked its thumb and turned a page. You did nothing. Your move, music, did not wink or beckon. It existed with the quiet of stone, learning it is mountain. Someone laughed to bleed tension and found no wound. Someone coughed to prove breath and did not enjoy the proof. The clock kept time the way time keeps secrets. The youngest strategist, young in face, ancient in apprenticeship, finally said what the room refused. If a move is undefeated across decades, perhaps it is not a move, perhaps it is terrain. He met your gaze long enough to confirm that courage can be accurate. The elders bristled. Elders bristle when youth finds the sentence they needed. Terrain cannot be countered. It must be accepted or lost beneath a sea with other appointments. They reset the boards. Music. They sharpened their vows. They promised each other that today would be the day inevitability. Apologized. And yet beneath the table you could feel it. The floor learning a new balance. The air trying on a heavier coat. Their decades had entered the room with crowns polished. Music. Your move had entered with none, and already the crowns looked tired. They began the analysis with the reverence of music precision experts give to legends and the arrogance kings give to maps. First they froze your move frame by frame, as if slicing time into obedient moments would reduce inevitability to a manageable meal. The grandmaster narrated the playback with a calm that had frightened prodigies into retirement. He named squares you never touched, roads you never walked, variables you never acknowledged. The others nodded, relieved to music. Hear familiar music. Then the sound wavered. A night that should have threatened did not. A file that should have opened stayed shut, as if the hinge had chosen principle over music, physics. He rewound, slowed further, inserted markers like anchors, and the water kept being water. He hid his surprise behind a cough that no one believed. The game theorist took over, translating your decision into a tree of branches. Each branch a universe. Each leaf of forecast wearing numbers like armor. He asked the model to punish you for audacity. The model shrugged with the polite certainty of truth. He inverted payoffs, changed priors, widened confidence intervals until the chart looked like a galaxy viewed music through mist. The Nash equilibria flickered, tried to exist, failed politely. Music, wrote Undefeated, implies non-dominated, then crossed it out, then wrote terrain again, small, like a child carving initials on a desk because confession requires wood. The economist insisted that what cannot be modeled cannot be real, and what cannot be priced cannot matter. He fed data until his machine purred with smugness, the smugness of domesticated thunder. It returned a curve that dipped where markets never dip without scandal. He added oversight, incentives, penalties. The curve, music, bowed further, like a head remembering a promise it never made. His assistant, music, whispered that perhaps the utility function was wrong. He silenced the whisper with a glance and asked for more data. The way lost men ask for heavier maps. The negotiator repeated the mantra that every move can be bargained with if you find the appetite it hides. He listed your supposed appetites with a poet's confidence. Music, recognition, safety, leverage, closure, myth. He designed offers to tempt emperors and traps to humble saints. Music. He read them aloud in a voice that had talked rulers into surrender. Your move declined as if it had not heard him. He raised the offer, a cathedral of concessions, and watched gravity remain indifferent. He realized too late that presence does not eat. The timing master consulted instruments other men treat like relics. He said the undefeated move was a rhythm problem, and rhythm is mortal. He shifted tempo, trying to make your step late, early, offbeat, off balance. The room felt the second stretch obediently until they returned uncooperative to the rhythm you had brought with you. He looked at the clock, and the clock looked back with pity, the pity of granite. His fingers, trusted by calendars, searched the air for the hinge of the moment, music, and found only a door that opened for no one. The military architect erased, and music redrew the board as campaign from supply lines to morale, from seasons to rumor. He placed your decision inside a siege and fed it delay. The siege gained weight. He forced a retreat across a bridge, music, and found the river absent, replaced by a plain that had no patience for surrender. He ordered a feint to lure your center, and the feint returned, carrying his banner, music. He spoke less with every diagram, learning the dialect of bewilderment. Across the circle, the elder strategist with victories older than most nations leaned in. Music, convinced that pattern recognition is a sacrament that never fails its priests. He described your move as a composite of known gambits, a quilt stitched from ancient cunning. He smiled at his cleverness until he realized quilts warm, but climates endure. Music. He tried to pull at a seam and found none. He called it anomaly to protect his pride. The youngest called it law and lost nothing. They changed music, lenses, languages, and loyalties. They quoted philosophers about the primacy of counterplay and cited mathematicians about the music tyranny of limits. They invoked myths to tame the feeling. the feeling that something more than calculation had entered the room. And then the first hairline fracture showed itself, not in the models, but in their posture. Shoulders that had been iron let themselves, music, be human. Pens that had never paused circled the same word twice. Two of them reached for water in unison, music, and looked startled to discover thirst. Certainty does not drink. Certainty allows others to sip and calls it mercy. They accused fatigue, music, and ordered fresh light. They blamed bias and swapped analysts like swapping masks at a masquerade that had outlasted its music. They took your move apart, the way boys take apart radios, unscrewing with faith that a song is hiding under every screw. They arranged the pieces on felt and heard silence that did not call itself music broken. An intern forgotten in a corner wrote quietly, "It is undefeated because it is uninterested in music winning." He did not show anyone. Interns keep notes for the future, notes that elders will later pretend they always knew. By midday, definitions began to turn on their owners. Countermeasure narrowed into excuse. Framework drifted into costume. Strategy, that beloved word, felt suddenly like furniture in a house. Discovering it was ship. Music. The historian tried to soothe the room with precedent, and found none that did not look small under the weight of now. He closed his book gently, the way one closes a friend's eyes. They asked you questions to perform power. You answered, music, with the same move, the refusal to be moved. Not stubbornness, music, geology, not defiance, weather. They circled back to first principles. They circled back to their first principles to harvest courage and found thin soil. One proposed a vote as though democracy could repeal gravity. Another suggested delay as though time would side with decades over moments. Time, polite, abstained. When they finally admitted diagrams no longer described the world, it felt like biting rind. The rind of a fruit they had sold by the crate but never tasted. Sower, clarifying, humbling. A grandmaster opened his hand above the board and did not drop the piece. The gesture was an encyclopedia, resignation without theater. The room inhaled, music, expecting grief or rage, would arrive with smaller and worse comprehension. Move was not beating them. Their idea of the board had been an old photograph. They wrote new rules on the margins, like survivors sketching maps from memory after the shoreline shifts. Not every dominance is contest. Some dominances are climate. Do not counter climate. Learn weather. Do not bargain with presence. Adjust rhythm. Decades nodded at the advice like widowers nod at condolences. Useful late. And still they insisted on one last sweep, an act of professional piety. Search for the exploitable mistake. The sweep returned with empty hands that smelled faintly of rain. The youngest met your eyes again and did not flinch. The elders looked away, each protecting a lifetime from the draft under the door. The fracture in their logic had widened into a window. Outside the window, the landscape declined to be a map. The room was no longer chorus. It was a choir of soloists. Realizing their songs could not meet in harmony, the grandmaster redrew the board a third time, his chalk hand unsteady. He moved tonight not to demonstrate, but to reassure himself that pieces still obeyed. It toppled mid-motion the way a dream trips on its own foot. He froze. The room pretended it had not seen, but the pretense cracked when the logician, pale now, muttered, "Music, impossible." A word professionals reserve for amateurs, music, not themselves. The negotiator tried to reset the atmosphere, smiling as though doubt were just another variable to be bartered. "Every fortress has a gate, music," he declared. Even this moved, but the words did not land. They drifted like dandelions without wind. The economist whispered equations like prayers. His curve refused to bend. The mystic strategist closed his eyes and sought patterns in silence. The silence offered only silence. The council had grown addicted to its own certainty. Decades had been their fortress. They had believed music, time itself, was their ally. For time wrote us legends. Music. Yet your move did not erode. It grew sharper, clearer, stronger under their scrutiny, like stone under centuries of rain. It did not dissolve. It sculpted itself. Each analysis, each dissection, each arrogant attempt to reduce it left only one conclusion. Your move was not strategy at all. It was climate, and climate cannot be beaten. Climate can only be endured. One by one, the cracks widened. The historian who had never been at a loss for a cove's president flipped page after page and found no echo of you. The political architect scribbled coalition trees until his ink dried, then stared at blank parchment as if it might apologize. The strategist of command set down his cane, the gesture of a man realizing his foundation was sand, and the gesture of a man realizing his foundation was sand. Timing master, usually so serene, tapped his watch and whispered out of rhythm, as though rhythm had betrayed him personally. A murmur began at the edges of the circle. What if the move is undefeated because it does not play? They did not say it aloud. To admit that would mean their decades, their crowns, their reputations were exercises, music in performance against a stage that never cared. But their eyes betrayed them. Confidence was gone. Certainty was gone. All that remained was con. All that remained was presence, and presence was undefeated. It started with the grandmasters' hands. They were famous hands, the kind that carved destinies across boards and left prodigies trembling in resignation. But now they trembled themselves. He tried to disguise it by adjusting a sleeve, by shuffling a pawn that did not need shuffling. Still the tremor spread, not just through fingers, but through the certainty of everyone watching. When the hands of inevitability falter, inevitability itself looks suspect. The economist was next. For decades he had promised that numbers never lie, that equations are the truest mirrors of reality. He summoned models thick with authority, each curve a monument to mastery. But when he input your move, the graph rippled like water, refusing to remember a stone. He adjusted variables, forced new assumptions, even bent the laws of scarcity themselves. Every result ended in blank space. His pen snapped between his fingers, music, ink spreading across the ledger. He tried to smile, but the corners of his mouth refused the order. The negotiator leaned forward, confident charm still his weapon. He had brought kings to their knees with contracts that looked like blessings. He spoke offers into the chamber: peace, power, praise, even prophecy. His words were designed to wrap around will, yet the air rejected them. Each phrase slipped to the floor like coins without mint. He raised the stakes, promising the unimaginable, bargaining as if bargaining itself were music, sacred. Still, your move refused to answer. The silence embarrassed him in a way defeat never had. He bowed his head, whispering to himself, "What do you trade with someone who does not need?" The strategist of command held out longest. His maps had painted continents in new colors. He summoned formations, counter-formations, feints, diversions, retreats. He moved his cane across the table as if directing invisible forces. Music. Yet with each plan, the pieces moved against him. A flank refused to hold. A bridge dissolved into music, mist. Morale turned to hesitation without cause. He struck the cane down as though volume could rewrite law. The cane split at the base and the echo mocked him. A general without ground is only a man in uniform. Music. The mystic tried her. Charms, weaving incantations of balance and symmetry. Her voice, once enough to steady storms of men, music, quivered mid-syllable. She demanded silence to bend, but silence only grew heavier, pressing her words flat before they left her lips. She closed her eyes to hide the tears forming, not of sorrow, but of recognition. "It isn't a move," she whispered. "It's the room itself." The judge attempted a verdict, pounding his staff like thunder. His voice rang hollow. The law he spoke fractured under its own sound. The scholar wrote furiously, documenting each failure, but his ink bled across the parchment until the letters blurred together like confessions. Drunk on rain. Domino after domino, collapse after collapse. Not dramatic, not explosive, subtle, inevitable. The surgeon of minds who had once cut men open with language sat in silence, realizing words themselves had retired. The merchant flipped through ledgers, searching for debt, profit, leverage, anything to own you, music with. Every page turned blank in his hands, and the youngest strategist, who had spoken earlier of terrain, leaned back, music, eyes wide. He understood now. It was not that their decades had been wasted. It was that their decades had mistaken themselves for eternity. Your move revealed the truth. Decades are sand, presence is mountain. When one master breaks, you blame fatigue. When two falter, you suspect coincidence. When all collapse in sequence, you face law, and law does not apologize. The rulers watching from their throne shifted uneasily. They had promised victory, expected brilliance, demanded supremacy. Instead, they witnessed unraveling. Whispers ran among them. Is the move truly undefeatable, or is our entire world an illusion dressed as strategy? By the time the last domino fell, there was no debate left. 12 strategists, decades deep in triumph, sat hollow, their crowns of mastery reduced to dust. No wind bothered to carry, and still, music, you had not moved. The rulers had summoned these minds like storms, expecting lightning to strike in their favor. Yet, now they shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Decades of certainty cracked before their eyes. The grandmaster's trembling hand, the economist's snapped pen. Music, the negotiator's hollow offers, the general's fractured cane. Each collapse struck not just the 12, but the throne itself. A king known, for his cruelty leaned forward, veins tightening across his temple. "Explain," he demanded of the scholar, whose quill still scratched desperately at blurred parchment. The scholar stammered. "The move, it doesn't yield to analysis. It behaves not as choice, but as law." His voice faltered on the word law, for he had always sworn that law belonged to rulers. Now he realized law was older than crowns. Another ruler laughed sharply to cover his unease. "Nonsense. Every code can be broken, every fortress breached. Try again." But his laughter rang false, a brittle sound that echoed against the walls and returned as mockery. His music. Peers did not laugh with him. They had seen too much to pretend. Whispers grew among attendants lining music, the chamber. If the 12 cannot break it, who can? Servants exchanged uneasy glances. Guards gripped their steel tighter as if metal could shield them from silence, and outside rumors already stirred that the Council of Brilliance had been brought low, that decades of mastery had collapsed in a single afternoon. Panic does not wait for proclamations. Panic writes its own dispatch. The strategist of time stood at last, desperate to salvage dignity. He declared, "Even if your move cannot be countered, time itself will erode it. Nothing survives forever." Yet, as he spoke, the torches flickered. The clock hands ticked once and then hesitated. A single heartbeat of stillness enough for arrogance to wither. Music. Every witness felt it. Even time seemed unwilling to side against you. He sat down in silence, no one daring to applaud. The rulers began to quarrel among themselves. Some insisted the strategists had failed out of weakness. Others whispered treachery, music, sabotage, curses, but their arguments rang hollow. For every man in the room had felt it. Your move was not resisting, it was music, not even fighting, it simply was. And presence that simply is cannot be countered, cannot be bargained with, cannot be undone. The serpent strategist finally broke her silence, her voice thin and trembling. "We are not analyzing a move," she confessed. "We are standing in terrain." Her words hung heavy in the chamber. The ruler shifted again, realizing what it meant. Terrain does not lose. Music may survive it, adapt to it, endure it, but you cannot erase it. One of the younger rulers, less hardened by years of arrogance, "Music," whispered the thought the others feared most. "If decades crumble, music, hear what of our thrones?" No one answered. For thrones are built on the illusion that strategies last forever, that mastery is eternal. And here, before their eyes, eternity had bent to silence. The council chamber had begun with confidence filled with the scent of superiority. Now it reeked of doubt. Decades had not just collapsed from the hands of the 12. They collapsed from the pillars of the rulers themselves. And doubt, once it enters a throne room, never leaves empty-handed. And through it all, you had not spoken a word.